Hi. Hey everybody, it is Jason, and yes, I am back. Hopefully now I'm gonna be doing sort of more regular videos. I say hopefully because you know what I'm like by this point. But basically, it's been really hectic. I did actually film a few videos, including my 3-month son T, but editing them has been hard. Not because of dysphoria. Dysphoria when editing videos is kind of non-existent now, which is great, but I've kind of been running a convention, so I've been doing a lot of video editing, a lot of music, that kind of thing, or prepping up for it. And then that went down really well, but then after that, there was a load of gatekeeping rubbish, thanks Lloyd's Pharmacy, and basically it sent my anxiety going into crazy mode, so it's taken me a little while just to recover from that, and kind of get to a point where I'm okay to film. So what I'm going to be doing is, I can't even remember if I did a 4-month son T video. I might have done, but again I didn't edit it. But since I'm quite close to 5 months on T, what I'll do is I'll film that when it comes around next week. But what I do want to talk about, because at this stage it is more relevant to me, is a top surgery update. Yes, nothing's specifically happened yet, but I do want to update you on that and kind of give you my general thoughts about my chest, because I haven't really done that yet. Yes, here's my chest, hello. I've been kind of wanting to do this video for ages actually, just as a kind of amusings about how I feel about it and what chest dysphoria means to me and lots of other transmasculine people. Who are non-binary people as well, who want it to be different and things like that. So, first things first is that, in the end, I decided to go private. And that was possibly one of the best decisions I ever made. Having said that, it was a big decision to make. It was not something that I made lightly, especially as so far I've been going down the NHS route with my testosterone. But basically, with all the stuff going on in terms of waiting times getting longer, and then there was things like, basically I've wanted Kneeshaw for ages. I did think of a couple of different surgeons, but I went for Kneeshaw fairly quick, and I've kind of stuck with that. That it came more apparent that, okay, he's training a few other people, so therefore on the NHS you might not be with him, but you might be with somebody else. And I'm sure they're great, like, at what they do. I'm sure they're brilliant, but at the same time, my heart was kind of set on him, because I'm aware of his techniques and his experience and all that stuff. But then, in the end, yeah, it was the length of time I'd have to wait. It was the fact that I had to be referred still by the NHS, and even then I was kind of speculating, okay, so I've got an endocrinology appointment in January, so I'll probably get it done then, and then it will be referred, and then it will kind of start from there, and then it will be maybe another year. But I thought about it more and more, I thought, well, actually that's kind of the minimum. I don't know for certain if that's what it will be. It might be a case of I can't get referred at the endocrinology appointment because it's more to do with that, maybe. Or it might be a case of they can do that, but then they'll want me to go and have another appointment about top surgery to talk about it before putting it through. And when putting all that together, I'm just like, no. Like, I was willing to wait until 2019 for surgery, but any longer than that, no way. I just couldn't do it. And then, about a week after I'd secured an appointment privately for my consultation, and that was all done really, really quick. It's like, yeah, here's an appointment in like a month and a half or so. I think it was like 6 weeks. It's like, okay, cool. About a week later, Kneeshaw kind of made the announcement, as it were, that he was basically going off the NHS. He was not taking NHS appointments and referrals anymore. And I'm just like, wow, okay, that's quite astounding, because it means that it's like, you know, I've gone private. I am going to be, you know, seeing him, and he's going to be helping me, whereas if I'd have waited on the NHS, I wouldn't be able to use it. And this has kind of been a thing that's happened quite frequently with surgeons, and that they're not doing NHS referrals anymore, or they're suddenly being taken off the list of NHS surgeons, and it's all kind of up in the air. I don't know the precise cause of this, whether it's just because there are lots of people going through, I don't know, but yeah, it's quite scary stuff. So in the end, I'm really pleased that I went private with him. So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping then that the actual surgery itself will be, fingers crossed, in a few months' time, which sounds really, really not very far away, which is brilliant. But bear in mind, I haven't really talked about this very much, but the dysphoria of my chest has been something that's been going on for at least 10 years. I talk about like T a lot and my hips and stuff, and that was one of the things, as I said, when I was about 15, when I really sort of started getting dysphoria, but my chest was another one. Basically, it was not one of these lightning bolt moments where as soon as I started puberty and as soon as they started growing, I was like, no, I hate this, whatever. It was tolerable. And the reason why it was tolerable is that I had complete and utter disassociation of my chest. And I've never really heard anybody else talk about this as much as I've sort of disassociated. Basically, my mind, for the majority of when I was a teenager and the majority of my puberty, did not see these as breasts or anything remotely feminine. My mind saw them as pecs in the same sort of thing, you know, like you get your Johnny Weissmullers and your Arnold Schwarzeneggers, that, you know, really big pecs. That's how my brain saw them, and it never thought any the wiser. It didn't know any better. So there was this sort of strangeness in my mind of, I kind of knew what they were, and obviously people said to me, oh yes, you know, they'll be growing and whatever, growing breasts. So I knew what they were, but at the same time my mind just blocked any of that out whenever I looked at it, whenever I could see them. And then with that kind of on the side, there was also this thing of, you know, because I was getting older and because I was supposed to be more feminine, you know, I'd be getting bras, and in a way that was quite affirming, because it's like, yes, I'm getting older and therefore I can be more like the other girls and all this stuff. So there was this desperation around my chest to fit in with what the other girls were doing, but at the same time, whenever I was with myself alone, it's just none of that existed, none of that was correct. And it was such a subconscious thought that I never addressed it. And even through uni, it was the same sort of thing. I still like wore bras, and it was something I got used to, but at the same time, it's like, whenever I looked at myself in the mirror, it was just this complete disassociation. But then, when I got to around 20, it kind of went through a second stage. I call it my flowering stage, because basically they were quite perky to begin with, but then they started becoming more like, you know, adult in what they look like. So the areolae in particular grew quite a lot. They got sort of a bit more saggy, I suppose, slightly more saggy than before. A little bit bigger as well, and in particular during that time of the month they would grow quite a lot. And then again, I would just sort of ignore this most of the time, and then they reached a point when I was 23 and no longer at uni, and I was living with my mum at the time and I was working. Maybe because I was out of uni I could think more about it, or I had more headspace to think about it, I don't know. But I just got this realisation once I was sort of lying on my bed, I'd just been out of the shower, and I looked at myself, and it's like they're not pecs, like they were kind of drooping, and it was horrible, and I realised what they were. I just had this big, like, sort of smack in the teeth as to what they actually were, and that they were not going away, and I couldn't get rid of it. And pretty much soon after that, maybe like a day or two later, that's when I made the realisation that I was no longer a woman. Or rather, in my mind, I did not see myself anymore as a woman, is what I'm saying. So I made that first step. Although I didn't sort of make the full realisation that actually I'm not a woman because I'm a man, until, 25 and whatever. But I'm going to do another story about that in another video, about how I came out, for real. But, yeah, so I'd reached this sort of huge thing of dysphoria and all that about them, and that has never ever gone away, and it's always been there, of that my brain has always thought of them as something else than they actually are. I'm supposed to be flat. That's the whole point of it. And again, as I got older, I started wearing more clothes that I wanted, so for example, sort of this type of stuff. I hated how they looked under it, because it's like, no, it's a design, it's supposed to be flat and all this stuff, which is silly because obviously plenty of girls wear, as in cis girls wear, t-shirts and they have a logo on, but for me that was kind of like a justification of there was something wrong with it. But again, I still didn't know that it was dysphoria. And then what I started doing, I went through kind of a stage when I was sort of 24. Some of you might have seen this actually. I was working out a lot and eating really, really well, and I lost weight because of it. And I wanted to do that because the way I looked reminded me of how I was before, sort of in school and when I wasn't that confident, and that was my main reason for doing that. But at the same time, deep down, again, it was deep down, and I didn't really get why, but I wanted to lose my big thighs and my big bum, and also, of course, I wanted to lose these. And after a while of losing weight and getting to a weight that I was more confident with and feeling more muscular, and that was all good, basically these were still there, because of course they're going to still be there. They're not going to disappear if you lose a couple of stone. But it's very much like when people go on tea and then things become more noticeable and you get worse dysphoria. It was the same sort of thing, in that I'm more muscular, I look a bit more like I should, and then these things are still here. And that's when I realised, okay, there's obviously something wrong with how I see myself and me having these. And I still couldn't quite put my finger on it. Even when I spoke to, well, I didn't speak to, I met somebody who was a trans guy and he'd had top surgery. I didn't talk to him about surgery specifically, but I knew what he'd got. I could just kind of put two and two together. I saw the scars, and I thought, yeah, good for him, good for him. But I never once made this sort of distinction of, yes, that's what I need, that's me, that, lots of other trans guys do. I just didn't get that at all. I think the reason being was I just did not want to admit that I needed surgery. And even when I went through like a big breakup with my ex-fiance, and I was sort of fully single and being able to like think more about this kind of thing, I still didn't want to admit that I was trans, because I thought, because I didn't really know that much about it, I thought that it meant that I had to have surgery, and I think it was just this this premise of I don't want surgery, and that kind of terrified me. But again, I didn't really think about it enough to think, okay, well, what actually does the surgery involve, or this, that and the other. But then, and this is part of me coming out properly, but what made the real distinction for me was that I took a quiz. I took a silly quiz when I was feeling really dysphoric. I'd been on the beach, I was very hot, but also I'd worn trunks for the first time because my mum was like, come on, we're going to get some trunks. And it was amazing, and I got so utterly confused and went into a meltdown, and I had to escape to the hotel. But I took this quiz, and one of the questions in the quiz was, if you could change how your body looked, so say for example, if these were removed, you know, something like that, at a flick of a switch, rather than surgery, so, you know, just a magic wand or a switch. But you couldn't go back, as it were, would you do it? And I thought, yes, obviously yes. And I realised as well that a few months prior to that, I started saying to people I know, wouldn't it be great if I could just turn these on and off? And I wonder what people must have thought about that, because obviously, you know, if you're absolutely fine with them, you don't really say things like that. Unless maybe you're an absolutely dedicated cosplayer or something like that. But, yeah, and things started coming together in my mind. I started looking at myself in the mirror and doing sort of poses, very manly poses, and I realised, oh my god, all this time I've been seeing them as something else. And no wonder, and that's why, and I realised that what it is dysphoria, and, you know, that's why all this time my mind had been so disassociated, because it is literally wrong. They shouldn't be there, and that's why at this stage I'm buying it. I'm trying to pretend they're not there. And I still have this kind of bittersweet relationship with them, in that most of the time I see them still as pecs, even though I've gone through this whole epiphany. But when I don't, I really don't want them there. I hate them, and they are a massive, not inconvenience, because it's not an inconvenience, it's worse than that. It's a problem that they are there, and they are stopping me from doing so many things that I want to do in my life. Some of those things are very, very small, that most people don't have to think about. Other things are very, very big, like being able to go to the beach and actually feeling okay about being there, and, you know, being confident in showing myself off and being me. And it's been a very big mental journey going through this disassociation and lack of identity, because that's kind of what I felt like when I was a teenager, to ignoring it completely, to feeling terrible about it, and then as I am now, kind of realising what I have to do, and that, you know, there is something that I can do in order to fix this. Now, obviously, if there was something else that I could do besides surgery, I would do that, and I think it's important for cisgender people to be aware of this, because there are lots of people, especially trans guys, who show off their top surgery results. And I think some people get the impression that, yeah, it's become like a fad, loads of people are doing it, and it's like, yeah, because it's necessary to so many transmasculine people and non-binary people. Not all of them, but many of them. And it's something that's very, very freeing and liberating. To be able to see, look at me, this is what it should look like. And of course, with down there, it's much more difficult, because you can't sort of wave that area around, you know, unless you want to be taken off YouTube. So it's important to realise that none of us go through this lightly at all. Excuse me. And it's very important to know that there is a healing process behind it, and there's mental preparation as well. Like, in my way of thinking, as I've said, it's taken me years to actually accept that, you know, decision to do surgery and to have the surgery. Whereas there were many years prior to that when I just wouldn't have been able to. The problem then was, as soon as I had the epiphany, I felt ready. I felt ready to transition, and obviously I've had to wait until last summer to actually start the whole process off. But in any case, so yeah, sometimes it takes people a long time to be ready for surgery. Other times people don't want surgery at all, or sometimes people do want surgery but they can't afford it. And going back to the private thing for a minute, you know, I feel really, really lucky, and it took me a lot to actually accept that I was allowed to go private, because I'm aware that so many people can't afford it, and technically I can't afford it either. I've just got very, very good family who are willing to help and support me with this, which is amazing. And it's just like, I have a privilege because I'm able to go private and actually pay for it, because we're talking sort of £7,000, possibly £8,000 here, and many people do not have that kind of money. So it took me a long time to actually allow myself to go private. But having said that, you know, these last few months of being on T have been important as well, because it's made me sort of reflecting, okay, you know, is this definitely what I want? And obviously it is, but it's sort of given me room in my mind to think about it. But I think if I had to say, if for some reason there was a choice that I had to make between either testosterone or surgery, I would definitely go for the surgery, hands down. It's going to be such an important thing for me to do, and it's just amazing that suddenly after all these years, like 10 years of wanting to sort it out, in whatever way, you know, shape or form, suddenly it's like, boom, okay, you're going to have it in like a few months, hopefully. I will know, hopefully next week, with my consultation, because quite often he gives a date on the day of the consultation. So, fingers crossed. It may be a case of it's going to be more February time, might be March, might be April. But that's sort of the general sort of time I've heard it can take, so a few months. I think if it was something like next month, it would be too short notice, because you have to sort stuff out on Christmas and all that. And preferably not January, because it will be cold. And again, it's miserable weather, so we'll see. And then it'll be a case of preparing for it and all that, which I am already doing mentally. I've been preparing for it for a while, actually, and just sort of thinking about different parts of the surgery where people might feel uncomfortable, or there's a thing called post-op depression as well, which I've been looking into. But yeah, I feel absolutely okay about the surgery, and I'm aware that things can go wrong, because that's one of the first things that people say, like, oh, you know, but can't things go wrong? Oh, you know, are you sure about doing this? I mean, seriously, if you had cancer, or if you had, I don't know, a terminal illness of some kind, you know, would you really be saying to somebody, oh, you know, if you're having a surgery, it could go wrong? Of course it can go wrong, it's a surgery, but at the same time, this is going to completely change my life for the better, because if I couldn't have this surgery, then it's quite possible that I wouldn't live for much longer. And I know that's kind of going, whoa, what? But it's true. This thing, obviously, you know, T's, as I said, has been very important, and I've kind of continued on because I was able to get on T. But if someone turned around to me and said, no, you can't have this surgery, you will never ever have it, I would just be absolutely devastated, and I don't know if I'd be able to carry on living because of it. And again, it feels very kind of doom and gloom, but it's true, and I'm very, very positive now because I know that I'm going to be having the surgery very soon. Compared to, say, a month or two ago, when I was, again, going kind of downhill quite a lot because I didn't know how long it was going to be, and I was really struggling with waiting, and I still am, but the fact that my consultation is in less than a week is another step, and I'm just sort of keeping positive on that, and I'm sure it's going to be really good. And I know that these next couple of months or so are going to fly by, but at the same time you can get bogged down in counting the days a lot of the time, which is also what I was doing with T, to be fair. But in a way it'll be good because I'll have a date, which means that I can, you know, distract myself or entertain myself or whatever until that comes up. Whereas with testosterone, I didn't quite know when the date was going to be. It was a bit unpredictable. But yeah, we will see. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there, but in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic week coming up, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.